Alright, it's time to hide the cubs and go back to school. We're talking about Beastars and the fur will fly on Behind the Curve. Alright, everybody, welcome to Behind the Curve. We're talking about something culturally relevant for a change.
We're ahead of the curve.
We're ahead of the curve for once. So we're talking about Beastars. As always, I'm Andrew.
I'm Matt.
So we're here to discuss a show that's a lot more than just furry animals having ridiculous romantic misunderstandings and romps. Alright, so we're all good, and let's launch in. So this is a new title for those of you who don't know what Beastars is. I can't imagine why you'd be watching this podcast, but in case you don't know, Beastars is a anime series that follows the lives of various anthropomorphic animals.
It's Netflix exclusive. It came out last year in September, I believe.
In Japan, it came out in, what was it, March of this year? March of this year in America.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe September there, March.
March here sounds right. Yeah. So we have watched through the series. We have many thoughts about it. So if you don't know, it just follows the lives of several students at the fictional Cherryton Academy in what we believe is some fictionalized version of Japan, perhaps, maybe not. We don't really know, because there's not a whole lot of world building outside of the school itself. But other than that,
I mean, it's not high school, right? I mean, it's not college.
I believe so. Even though the ages of the characters seem to be higher than what would normally be for like maybe, I don't know.
We'll get to that.
So we're going to launch in. So we're going to talk about a lot of the themes and the execution of this series and whether or not we like it. So and what, if at all, meanings and deeper meanings, because we do think that this is a series that does indeed have some deep meanings and themes. So we're going to dive into those. So please join us for the ride ahead as we go in. We're down a rather Freudian rabbit hole.
Emphasis on rabbit.
Emphasis on rabbit.
We'll get to that. What?
No, I was going to say that I was talking to Gabrielle earlier, and she was saying Freud would have a field day with this series.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So, you want to start us off?
Yeah. Well, I was just going to preface the fact that it's probably this episode's gonna be on the PG-13 side, so definitely should hide the cubs, like Andrew was saying earlier.
Yes, please. Like, this is going into YouTube's new guideline things. This is not an episode for the kids. This is a show that involves a heavy emphasis on both sexual relations and sexual politics. So if you don't want to hear about that, or if you don't want your kids to hear about it, this is the time to jump out the boat now.
Another preface, that I have only watched the anime and not read the manga, even though people tell me that it's actually worth reading.
Same. I've gotten many recommendations.
Which is an expensive habit if you think about it. I do have other things in mind to buy, but yeah, yeah, I've also stayed away from the wiki for that reason, because it kind of blends canon in a way, and it is a different thing going on.
Oh, blending canon. I do not like blending canon.
Yeah.
Generally. But alright. So we have the show, only 12 episodes of which are in English right now. So why don't we start at the beginning and try and work our people through, and we won't really be giving too much of an outline. So if you're unfamiliar with the series, this would be a good time to go watch all those 12 episodes.
Yeah.
And then hop back in here, because this show, it looks simple, but it actually gets kind of complicated. So you're definitely going to want to watch it. Maybe even take notes. But alright, so Here we go. We're going in.
Well, I was going to start off also with the concept of itself is very avant-garde.
Yes, it is.
Not like art house, but new for its situation, I guess, in the sense that it's something interesting for the anime industry to tackle. Like when most people think of the American animation industry, think of the funny animal genre, like Looney Tunes, Mickey Mouse, that kind of thing. And there's kind of been a resurrection of that in Zootopia in a serious way. But this is a whole new look for the anime industry to tackle, because it's taking on the more Western funny animals genre, and not to mention to aim the show at adults or teenagers or thereabouts. Definitely a mature show.
Yes, and I'd say it's aimed at. I'd probably say young adults even more than older teenagers. Yeah.
But honestly, except for maybe Agretsuko and its uniqueness, I can't think of any other mainstream anime that does that. Maybe it's just becoming a trend now. It's a bit like the rare adult original animation dramas you see sometimes in the West.
Yes, which are very few and far between. But yeah, no, it does seem to be a growing genre, as sort of the animated drama, which is, I like it. I like it because you can do things that you can't do in reality with it, and go places you can't normally go, and I think it works very well. And I do agree that you're saying it is an avant-garde concept. I mean, basically the whole thing is just one giant ethics thought experiment. I mean,
it's less dry than that, but yeah.
What was that?
It's less dry than that, but yeah.
Well, yes, it's much less dry than that, but that is kind of like how I think about it, because it's very interesting.
It could be that just as a reaction to a Western trend, like we saw in 2016, we saw Zootopia and Sing come out, and we see this come out 3 years later, which is the time you would expect for to make a big animated production like this. Especially since Beastars the manga might have came out in 2016.
Yeah, I don't know when the manga actually started.
But it is telling that an anime got funded and got done by Netflix of all people.
Yeah, quite quickly too. Like, and I remember hearing it when they first started announcing they'd be doing it in English. Like, I remember that being a little bit of a buzz on the internet. Like, people were excited about that.
Let me guess, on Reddit, right?
Yeah, no, Reddit was very excited when we heard about this one.
Yeah. I agree with your use of Reddit. That's how I find out about my Shane Carruth stuff and all that.
I just had a moment trying to imagine what would happen if Shane Carruth if Shane Carruth did Beastars.
I'd watch it. I don't think I might actually not like it. It's just, like, I don't think he can take on everything.
Yeah.
Rather waste his time with stuff. Not that Beastars is a waste. It's just not his style.
Yeah, no, it'd be very interesting. We'd hear a whole lot of dialogue about schoolwork, wouldn't we?
Yeah, actually we would, without anything, definitions or anything explained.
Yes. Alright, so,
I want to talk about the animation next.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about the animation.
I do not like it.
It's weird. The animation's weird. Like, it works well in some places, and I got used to it at the end of the series.
Me too.
But it's not... It's very jarring to look at first. How would you even describe it?
Well, I don't know if this is helpful, but the CGI style reminded the show, it's on Disney XD, or was, Star Wars Resistance. And it was kind of trying to resemble 2D anime in, like, the lighting and, like, the shapes or colors or something like that. I guess they did that to make it cheaper or something. I don't know.
Like, it wasn't as bad as, like the new Berserk anime. It wasn't as, like, janky as that.
No.
But it was... It definitely had, especially, like, early on, it had some, like, just really weird moments. I will say, yeah.
You just mean the animation, right?
Yeah, just the animation. The animation has some really weird moments. Though I do think the one thing the animation did well was it got facial expressions well.
Yeah, that does count, ultimately.
Yeah, but... Yeah, a lot of the movement, especially, like, anything that involves, like, the characters going forward, looks weird. It looks almost like that effect, almost like old cameras at sporting events used to get.
Well, I think it's anime has a slower frame rate than Western animation, but when it does that, it almost looks like stop motion animation. And so far, I've recently watched this movie, The Willoughbys. It was trying to go for that, and it was like because it invoked it, it like worked.
Mm-hmm.
But this has a problem of like it not working, so the frame rate thing doesn't help. Either that or the frame rate was like normal, but then like we're used to the other, and then that messed us up too. It just doesn't work either way.
Yeah, no, it does have some jarring jumps in the animation. I mean, it's not a bad looking show by any means, but it's far from fantastic.
Yeah, I think there's a third show that would kind of use an animation like that. It was like a drama for adults. It came out last year. It was like done by the same team that did Ruby, RWBY,
Mm-hmm.
and like, I forget what it was called, but like it looked a lot like that too. So maybe it's like a new like cheaper system everyone's using now because it's like engines in video game technology, like or RenderMan with Pixar, like to use different software. I don't know, but like I don't like it.
Yeah, rather it's rather than 2D or cel shaded or even hand drawn. Though hardly anybody does hand drawn anymore.
Oh yeah,
you can sort of do the hand drawn style, but not really hand drawn.
the only person I know who does two people is like maybe Studio Ghibli and Spumco, which is done by the guy who did Ren and Stimpy, who nobody likes. You ever read about that?
Yeah. So yeah, no. So if you get easily weirded out by janky animation, maybe not the series for you. I will say the English voice cast did quite a good job.
Never listened to dubs, but I'm willing to hear this.
Okay, yeah, no. The English voice dub was very good. So
Interesting.
yeah. Especially guy who did Legoshi. Very good.
There's one thing I would like to talk about before going into everything else is that you said the created world isn't explored outside of the school. I agree with that. Like we basically agree it's in a Japan analogy country, right? Because they have the ancestor worship thing where the kid gets murdered and like
dinosaurs. They
What?
worship dinosaurs.
I didn't catch that.
Well, they don't worship dinosaurs. That was not really true. But it's like they do have like the whole like the meteor day thing is kind of like very ancestor worship.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, which is we get a lot into sort of the world's social dynamic, but we don't get a lot into the world's history. Yeah.
Yeah, that's important. Like with Zootopia, it opens like with the play.
Yes.
Like that. It's what we kind of missed the boat there.
Yeah. That is a little bit of a missed boat. And that may just because of sort of the cultural translation might sort of contribute to that as well. But I do agree with you. Sort of a, and again, like we don't need to have a play by play. We don't need to have a Beastars Silmarillion. but like a little bit more insight into the past would be nice.
Yeah, I would agree. Especially since like Zootopia there's a lot of ink spilled, so to speak, about like the fact that like all these species are like intermixing in the city,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not normative in their world, and it's like kind of this nation of immigrants thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of talk. I'll go back into that later, but like there's just all these species live together, and like none of the it's kind of like there's a mouse who's like the charge of the journalist department. It's kind of funny that he can yell to people, but like that's just kind of like it's just thrown at you and you have to accept it.
Yeah, it's thrown at you. There's a mouse yelling at a cat, and we're all okay with it. Like that. That's a normative thing. You're right. Like sort of the intermingling of people is very normative, whereas in Zootopia, that's only a normal thing in Zootopia.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, like it's the least explained, and like Zootopia just handled it better.
I do have to say, the Zootopia handled its world a little better. But okay, so what do you want to dive into? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like kind of like Zootopia has like the better resources, like it being Disney, but like but Beastars like does better like everything else, it being a PG-13 Zootopia.
TVMA Zootopia.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Like Black Sad or whatever.
Yeah, it was. There were definitely some TVMA. Though really, it was not quite as. Yeah, no, which I mean, I'm still trying to figure out the rating because I'm not really sure if it ever deserved to be TVMA. But hey, you know what? It's all right. Weirdly enough, it's TVMA for smoking, but not.
Oh, I thought it was really smoking. I didn't know
it was TVMA for smoking and nudity, not for violence.
Really,
which is very odd because nobody's ever never mind. It's one of those like, but nobody's ever naked.
Okay, moving on.
In the course of this, yes. All right, so story. So what do we want to talk about with the story? Because there's a lot going on with the story.
Yeah, I just wanted to say rather than give a I guess I could give a little bit of rundown.
Sure, go for it.
There's a murder subplot that starts off the series, and it could have been. This is a spoiler. All this is it might have been better if it introduced later in the series. The only thing it was really used for is that it's going to be used in future seasons, obviously, because that's how it's used in the manga, and that it needed to be. It kind of was used to establish the kind of war between carnivores and herbivores, at least a conflict that occasionally pops up.
Yes. It's used to show some character, and it's used to show a little bit of sort of the on-campus environment, by how people react to it. But I don't think it's used quite as enough, especially towards the middle end of the series. Even though I know the first season takes place across several months.
Yeah, feels like it anyway.
Yeah, still having a little bit more focus on something that traumatic happening on campus seems like they kind of missed an opportunity to spend a little more time on that. Outside of the first 3 episodes, it doesn't get brought up again until the 8th, the 7th or 8th episode.
Yeah, it definitely sets the mood. So maybe it's kind of like a taboo thing.
Yeah.
Kind of how suicides are treated in regular human high school anime things, kind of a thing. I see a kind of a parallel with that. That's actually not
a bad comparison at all, because it is kind of a taboo. You're right, because it is a taboo. Because remember when the news is on, and somebody comes in and turns off the news when they're talking about another news story in the world. It's that, and also in the last episode when the administration lady from the school is reacting to what happened. When
that moon lady?
Yeah, when the Goshi comes home, and her
you're with the herbivore, yeah, that was really nice.
Her reaction is automatically cover up versus deal with it. Yeah.
Never thought of that.
Yeah. So I mean, if you take those things into account, that kind of, but also I agree with you. There are. While it may not matter quite as much because the series is character driven rather than plot driven.
Yes.
There are several hanging plot threads because the season does not get resolved.
There's some inaccuracies that I wrote down that
Okay, sure, go ahead.
I think the season finale, about this the whole thing with the Tiger Gang. This is total spoiler again. His success was too easy. He basically defeats everyone. He's able to fight anyone he encounters successfully without any previous martial arts training. I thought that's what the Panda character was going to be for, but he kind of wasn't. And then he gets saved at the last moment twice, and then he saves Haru at the last second.
Yes.
So there's 3 last second attempts, and it's just I know I'm the realism person, but I think you agree that this is just not believable.
Yeah, no, it was a little bit because he's gonna be there, and it was kind of if he had snuck in and maybe taken out 1 or 2 guys, if he had snuck in and he just took out King Lion, maybe.
You don't know his name,
does he even have a name? Everybody calls him Old Man. Everybody just calls him Old Man.
Yeah, they do.
Which is weird. So if he had just snuck in and took out Old Man, Like, that would have been believable. Or if he took out, like, the first guy and then snuck in. Yeah, sure, I'll believe it.
Yeah.
But, like, that did feel a little bit like... That one did feel a little unbelievable. I was kind of glad they cut away from him to her. Yeah. So, like, it was like we don't have to, like, watch... So it was kind of like, yeah, that really shouldn't be happening. I mean, it was exciting, yes, and it was fun to watch, but it wasn't...
Yeah.
It didn't pass the fridge test.
So that your realism standards are TV tropes fridge test. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Lower than mine, but still good. Like that.
Well, it's sort of like the if it's believable in the moment, you can say that it theoretically worked inside the movie, but like if it doesn't stand up to scrutiny after the fact, it's kind of like one of those moments where it's like the Death Star blowing up Alderaan. When you're in the movie, you're going, "Oh my word!" and then afterwards you're going like, well, "Why didn't they just conquer it and strip mine it?" Like something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Like, but it's not even consistent to its own logic because it didn't really set up some special incident that would have like made things make more sense. But actually, watching it, I was actually expecting a Brazil moment that like not only was he like going to fail, but that he was like making huge part of it up in his head to kind of like deal with the fact that he lost or something. You know, that would have been actually maybe more satisfying if they wanted to have all that unrealistic stuff happen, or more satisfying if he killed like the old man and stuff like that.
Yeah, if he just took out the old man. Though I do have to say also like this brings us to another subplot is what the heck happened to Louis? Where is Louis? What is going on? Like he's the alternate. He's like the main secondary character. And he just vanishes from like the last several episodes.
I'm okay with the cliffhanger though because like it's I'm okay with that being a cliffhanger because it's introduced at the end. I guess only just because of that.
Yeah, it is to some extent, and so yes, there are two things where you like for the fight scene you will need to, especially because he gets especially because like how badly he gets beaten up by Bill on stage. Like, it does make it a little bit harder to believe that he's able to do all that he does.
Yeah, because how he established, like, he's, like, weak and he's, like, not a typical
wolf.
Carnivore.
Yeah, but he, and there is something to be said for when the nice guy finally snaps, which is...
Yeah.
But
even that has its limits.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the only reason they got away with it because Japan is so anti-gun, and they had no guns.
Yeah,
guns exist in that world, but there's gun control like Japan, so
yeah,
it's like there are guns they didn't get invented yet.
The one guy had a gun, the old man had a gun, and
that's about it.
And sort of the door guard, yeah. But you know, hey, bamboo arrows, just as good, as we learned.
Was that an Inuyasha reference or something?
No, that was because the panda's got the bamboo arrows that he's shooting.
Oh yeah, now I remember.
Yeah. So that was good. It would. So if you're able to suspend your disbelief and enter the world's sort of plot armor logic, it's weirdly enough, even though it's not that believable, it still turns out okay. Like afterwards. Like you're still okay with the story continuing at that point, which shows you how well the character writing is, how good the character writing is.
Well, yeah, it's not really a big surprise there. Like, I can't count how many like TV shows and stuff have plot armor on their side.
Yeah. So
like, yeah, it's more common. Not that it's excusable, but it's like it shows really bad in an arc.
Yeah, you wouldn't have too many stories if there was no such thing as plot armor at all, though.
For certain things.
For most. That's true, yes. And the hero went into battle, and then he died of dysentery. But
Directed by Shane Carruth.
Directed by Shane Carruth. what's the line? If you want to go see an opera about a prostitute dying of consumption in a garret, Mr. Ibsen in Oslo will write you something suitably dull. Sorry, that was very
okay.
That was very off topic. Actually, it wasn't, but beside the point. All right, so besides the plot, other than those two things, I have to say the plot's actually pretty. The plot meanders a little bit because again, it is character driven.
Yeah.
So it's more about the characters than about the overarching.
And theme driven.
Yeah, theme driven. So if like this is like discouraging to you listeners, like this is again not saying that it's badly written. We're just saying that the characters are far superior to the plot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the characters are worth watching for, and they are the real driving force in the story. All right, so you want to move into what else do you want to keep going with the plot for a little bit?
No, go into themes.
Okay, let's go into themes. All right, so we have there's a lot of complex themes in the story, and the thing is, there's a whole lot of theories about what these themes are, and even if they are analogies for things, this is something of a debate issue among the fans.
Well, I could say what it's not. First, we have to constrain what it's not saying because what it can't be saying.
Okay,
I think
sure.
it's an allegory for racism, like about racism, like Zootopia. I think it can be interpreted this way, not with the authorial intent of anyone involved, really.
Right.
Japan is not a nation of immigrants. If that's not a secret by now, it's definitely not. Obviously, there's like different reasons for this. It's also how do I say this? Retained some of its racism, if just because it's a isolated island state, unlike the former fascist nations of Spain, Germany, Italy, and like again, it's also isolated nation. So that's another thing. So there aren't a lot of immigrants. I can't see this being a race thing,
right?
Like Zootopia.
And even if it were an analogy, even if it were sort of a racial analogy like Zootopia it would be a very, very poor and clumsy one.
Yeah.
So, and I would agree with you because I kind of expected that going in.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
But that's not what I found.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it could have.
It could, but I don't think that's what it is. Nor would I think the story, because the whole story of Zootopia backs up that theme.
Yes.
Whereas nothing about
from the creators and like kind of the press interacting with Disney and them kind of confirming it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, whereas this story doesn't really have any of those same themes, except maybe the only one that it might have is what is the meaning of what is equality. But besides that, I mean, and that's not strictly a racial theme at all. That's a human theme.
Yeah.
So I think we're kind of beating around the bush. So Matt, we have differing ideas on what we think the primary thrust of the story is.
Yeah.
So
we both agree that it's about mating, though.
Yes, that is a major feature, and if you watch, yes, it is a major feature. Yes, it is a major feature. Don't be like, oh my goodness, how dare you show this on my Christian Minecraft server. No, trust me, the series gets into the weeds and below the belt line. So Matt, you have one theory, and I will say this much, that after speaking to Gabrielle, she agrees with your theory rather than mine.
Oh, really?
So you have won my girlfriend over to your side on this.
Also, for those who don't know, Gabe is also our editor for both our stories, at the moment at least.
Yes, she's a fantastic human who is going to medical school.
And she's also involved with Pathfinder, or whatever will come out of
yes,
that.
whatever's happening in RPG land with Crypt Bunny. But all right, so you go ahead with your theme. Yes.
Okay, so I think the series is attempting to explore the war between the sexes and sexual morality, but I think it does this in an odd way. Oh, by the way, did Gabe watch the entire series?
She did watch the entire series.
Okay,
Yes.
I thought so, yeah.
Yes.
So did I, so all three.
Uh-huh.
Okay. For example, the desire to eat meat is, I guess I'm going through my notes directly in paper, simply an allegory for unhealthy masculine sexual desires. Then what does that say about female carnivores? Also, if the carnivoreness is just an allegory, what does it say about carnivorousness appearing alongside actual mating? And again, I said, love your interpretation on this. You'll get to that.
Mm-hmm.
The
Sure.
other thing I felt was unresolved was the show's stance on sexual morality. Obviously, Legoshi is a virgin, but is he a virgin out of moral imperative or out of social awkwardness? Like, in other words, if he wasn't socially awkward, we'd just mate.
Uh-huh.
I think his views on things were formed by being close to his grandfather and maybe being taught his like older time morality. I guess because again, it's like a Earth analogy
Sure.
and
Yeah.
a personality type. So
Yes. So no, I actually agree with you with the grandfather thing because it is mentioned only like once or twice, but he does very much have a sort of a polite slowness, a very much restrained, polite personality, which is, and he also does like a lot of quiet hobbies. He's like old person hobbies.
yeah,
Yeah.
like the bug thing.
Yeah.
The bug. I didn't. Okay, I guess that kind of is a thing.
Yeah. The interesting, I think it's a Goliath stag beetle is his.
Yeah, it's definitely a beetle.
Yeah, and that's usually a symbol of strength. So when that dies, when the beetle dies, right before he rescues Haru, I think that's kind of him breaking down, sort of saying that I'm done holding myself back. Is when he
I also kind of interpreted it as something that him like taking care of creatures, like kind of more of a fatherly role, almost like motherly.
That's true. He
Like attacking other creatures in a way.
Right, which is why sort of like the first episode is so out of character for the character that he is, because you look at how protective he is of not just Haru, but also of elves, the sheep girl, how just sort of intensely protective he is of, especially the smaller female creatures that he's around.
Yeah.
So let's explore your interpretation of the theme, because I do think you have something really interesting there, which is sort of yeah.
There's a thing with conformity. I think here, like I said, like I don't know if you know this, but Japan has like still like there's kind of a leftover from its fascist era. That like this thing about strength. Like I read somewhere that like in certain schools, like you can actually get like an award for being strong, and that'll be like going the entire year without your shirt or something weird.
That's not all that impressive.
But you're too strong in like the colder months or something like that, you know, like
Okay.
so it's like there's a big thing with strength, you know, like not quite like Mussolini's like thing, like the macho thing, but like kind of a related thing, because you know, like their fashion is kind of different than the Western fashion. Like it's kind of like the ideal of strength.
Yeah, well, right. So what I was just thinking about is sort of the highest award that can be given to a Japanese pitcher in baseball. And one of the mandatory things is that he pitches 10 complete games.
Oh wow!
It's not uncommon. Yeah, it is. No, it was not an uncommon. Like some of the people who came from Japan, like you ever heard Hiroki Kuroda talk about? Was it Hiroki Kuroda or was it the guy who pitched for the Dodgers in the 90s, Hideo Nomo? I don't remember which one it was. But it was when they came over, they talked about, like, I came to America so I wouldn't have to throw 227 pitches every 6-7 days. Like that's an insane. That's like 1940s, 1930s pitch counts, which they're so like, and they're doing that down in like high school still, like 200 pitches at the start, which is, I mean, I'm somebody who's pretty skeptical of like modern pitch limits, but 200, especially on a teenager, I mean that's sick. I mean, that's messed up. But so no, I think I see what you're saying, sort of about the sort of the concept of strength, which is what we see funneled into Louis. Louis is the embodiment of strength at Cherryton. He is their balance beam. He is the swinging pendulum in the middle of Sprout Tower. How's that for a Pokemon reference?
Oh wow.
But no, please continue on with your sort of the carnivorousness
allegory.
Yeah.
Well, I still don't know if like why Legoshi is doing it. Like, would you say that like it's like whatever it is about him and how he was raised, or you think he's like actually morally? Because at the end, he seems to contradict that all. Because I feel like he does, like he would if he could, kind of a thing, with Haru at the end.
He would sleep with Haru. I'm assuming
marriage is a thing in this. Like that, like there's some people like, even if there's not like an idea of like waiting till marriage, that marriage exists in this.
Haru never actually says her parents are married.
No, I don't.
She
think
doesn't,
so.
does she? Because she has siblings, but I don't think she ever says explicitly whether or not her parents are married. Does anybody ever actually say wife or husband? I don't remember the words wife or husband ever being used.
No, I don't. It's also interesting, I don't know if this is relevant, but like Japanese people favor Western traditional style weddings.
Yes.
So it's like a concept of more Western concept of marriage than there is anywhere else in Asia, maybe even more than South Korea. It's out of like Christian missionary circles anyway, but I assume
I couldn't speak to that, but I do know sort of about the Japanese tradition of the Western wedding, which I found of all things like to catch on, that really kind of caught me off guard, but okay. I mean,
I do, but I think there still seems to be like I want to hint into this idea that he, because of raised with older values, that there's a right time to like this idea of committing, even if it's not in a concept, that he would rather do that, even if like without his stuff going on.
Right. Well, here's the thing: is the one thing that you have to notice is that of all the people, the only one who's ever talking about commitment is Legoshi. Because he's not saying to Haru, he's not saying, let's do this. He like confirms with her 3 times, like, I'm committing to this. I'm committing to this. I'm committing to this. I'm committing to you. And that's the end of the season, is I'm committing to this. I'm committing to this.
Okay,
Whereas she is maybe still in love with Louis?
Yeah.
Which is... That's a tough scene. The one when the power goes out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's tough. that's just like very unpleasant.
Would you say how do I say this? I know what to say. Like, he doesn't shame her either for what she's done, but he knows, he kind of gets. I assume he gets like in that scene where he like in the garden where he like slams his tail. Like, I assume like at that point he knows what's going on, but he doesn't shame her. He just like kind of gets scared and like runs away.
Yeah.
Like, he disapproves, but like his way of disapproving is not shaming someone. He's just getting scared and running away.
And he could.
Yeah, he could have.
He very well could. And there are characters that do that. Yeah. I'm thinking mainly of the other rabbits. The other rabbits are jerks in this. Every rabbit's a jerk in this.
Yeah, actually.
But so no, I think you do have a point there with sort of the connection between carnivorousness and I guess how else do you put it? Carnivorousness, at least for so. Continue on with sort of like why you think that kind of applies to male desire in the real world as an allegory.
Well, I think because it's sort of like disapproving of the hookup culture. Like, it shows Legoshi as a nice guy who treats Haru with equity and not as a sex object, and portrays those who are use mating as a social status trophy as brutal people. So like Legoshi's friends at the meat market with the homeless guy and the fingers incident. I'm gonna say that for people who haven't watched that.
Apart from Oba, yeah.
Yeah. And not to mention the fact that Haru's whole character arc seems to be a deconstruction of the hookup culture being consequence-free, considering the fact that she mates with other species so she doesn't risk having cubs, which I thought was very interesting. You know, in the manga, that you can have multiple species, because, like, Legoshi's, like, grandfather's a dragon or something weird. Anyway...
That came out of left field.
Look it up. This especially comes out since we learned she became the school floozy from
The
thinking
town
over
punk?
something bullied at school. But
Yeah.
Do you agree? Like,
No. It's a highly internalized and then external validation of an internal previous trauma. It's actually
something positive.
It's not positive, and it's very believable. It feels very believable that she behaves the way she does, because at first it's a little bit of a shock to you, because like, oh, she's so nice. Is like, you think, oh, the first time you meet her, oh wow, she's so nice. Then it's like, holy crap, where are your clothes? Second episode. Sorry, that's not really a spoiler.
Yeah, well, I also saw this thing as a social pressure thing, that like mating with her means you won't risk having cubs. Because for a lot of people, there was like risks of like this. They want me to marry into this family. They want me to save the extinct species of this rabbit and stuff like that. With her, like, you can kind of get the energy out.
Yeah,
and,
it's yeah, you're right. That's a good point. It's a
in real life, it would be like the equivalent of someone who's had like certain parts removed, like sort of, so that they don't get pregnant.
Yeah, it would be, except you don't have to alter anything. It's just natural.
It's also in real life, I think there'd be like more problems with diseases, if you get what I mean.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
But I assume that's not a problem here, or it's not going to come up yet. So when Legoshi starts losing his fur, then we'll know.
Every junior and senior dies of rabbit syphilis before the year's out.
Oh no! What has happened here?
Season 3. Let's the administration try and cover that one up.
Just like buy out a glue factory so you just glue this fur back or whatever.
just like, where? Oh, you're here to pick up your students. I'm sorry. I'd like that Monty Python sketch. I'm sorry, he's dead. No, it wasn't Monty Python. It was Fry and Laurie. Come to think of it.
Stephen Fry?
Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie, yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
They were funny. Alright, so basically, so your idea is kind of like, so the sort of the carnivorousness in the male, and the...
Well, I think in your notes you disagreed, or something along that line.
I disagree a little bit. So Gabrielle was saying that that if it's an allegory to real life, yours makes a lot of sense. Okay. Though within the story's logic, she's not entirely sure if it applies, because... So the thing is, so I don't disagree that there is a connection for the Legoshi between both sort of his as a predator animal drive and his physical attraction to both Haru and Juno. He is physically attracted to Juno. That's not, something that gets away. So it's, though they are not connected. The predatory and the attraction are not intertwined. It's not like he's a creepy person. Yeah. So whenever we're using like language like that, I think you need to kind of put them on separate because they doesn't in the same context. So
you really don't think it's a predator thing, like with what happened in the last-ish episode?
See, because you started to bring me over to your side because it makes a lot of sense. Though I'm not entirely sure about the sort of the male thing because Legoshi's male.
I find out how it's contradictory because like mating exists on the side of carnivorousness, and I was kind of like pointing out that the fact that there's female carnivores too, and they're kind of like almost ignored, and it's like, well, if this is just an allegory, how do these things like coexist? Like it kind of like the allegory falls apart, like, and it kind of makes it badly written in a way.
So I think you're kind of right. So I'm gonna look at like there are essentially really only 2 female carnivores that get any kind of screen time, and
I know Juno's the one. I don't know the other.
Juno and Sheila. Sheila's the cheetah from the drama club. Of all the background characters, she gets at least some importance. So for the 2 of them, I think having something from their perspective would be interesting. I do think that Juno definitely has that, because I'm trying to think it was. Honestly, to me, the scariest scene, because this is a series that definitely has sort of a horror subplot, like a little bit of a horror. What's the word I'm looking for?
Yandere?
No, not that. It's like it has a horror subtext.
Oh, okay. Maybe to a degree.
Yeah, so I think the scariest scene is not actually in any of the sort of the wolf ones or like the thrilling ones or the ones that are kind of like suspense scary. It's the one where Juno is on top of Lewis and is pushing him back, and he can't do anything about it, and she's just showing off that she's not only socially dominant but she's physically dominant over him because he can't do anything about it. And so,
that made me uncomfortable. That's why I forgot.
Yeah, right. Because she just pushes him back, and she's no, I'm in charge. And then so she is a scary character. So I think she also shows off her predatory instincts, though they are expressed socially, apart from that one scene. So I think it is about. I think it's about personal power. I think it's about personal power politics and social perceptions as filtered through sexual relations, which partially.
That makes more sense.
Which kind of goes back.
Not really contradiction of what I said, but kind of just like an extra nuance.
I actually agree with you. I don't think it is a contradiction of what you said, because if you take both sides, that makes both ones hold up. Because if we take both sides, they can hold each other up and make the series more coherent and make the interpretation coherent rather than, because there are some things like yes, there are female characters, but again, the series is so androcentric. We only ever see even though we get a lot of sort of Haru's experiences, we only ever get the attraction and the physical aspect from either Lewis or Lugosi's perspective. So I'm just going to throw that out there, even though I think Lugosi is very embarrassed by his male mode, as he calls it. Which, trust me, that little cut scene didn't leave too much to the imagination about what is actually going on.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, no, I think that yes, it is, so I actually agree with you. You mentioned in your notes that you'd like to see, maybe not even an episode, but maybe a spin-off?
A shoujo spin-off series that following female carnivores, possibly centering around Juno, at least after her character arc is done in this.
Yeah, because to see how the predatory instinct ties in with a female identity, because we see how a prey instinct ties in with a female identity.
Yes, we do.
But we don't see how a predatory instinct ties with a female identity, and that would be interesting to see. I think we get to see glimpses of it with Juno, but she enters the story so late that we don't get to see a lot of it, and we never get into her head. So I think we've come to a weird sort of mind meld with the theme analysis. But so do you want to just sort of hit? So I have a note about. I have two quick questions. So I have a question. I actually have kind of three questions, but one is not related to just the normal questions. And
the questions at the end, you mean?
No, I mean our last little subtopics. Do you just want to hit them in order?
Yeah, sure.
Really quick. So we have sort of so what were you talking about? Sort of the our personal identity with Lugosi was actually kind of different. So you had one interpretation, I had a different one.
Yeah, I said, one of the things that we wanted, what you said earlier, that we don't know why Lugosi is the way he is. We kind of concluded that he is moral, and that he just doesn't randomly made, and he does have sort of these morals that most people don't have, even if he was just raised by his grandfather. Mm-hmm. And I think that he definitely is a character that stands out as much as anime gives their main characters a lot of inner monologue. Literally an inner monologue is a trope in anime, it's just given to you.
Yeah, he's not bland, which is nice. It was nice to see a anime male lead who's not blank slate syndrome.
What's that?
It's usually oftentimes a lot of times I think this is more of a newer anime thing, but it's the male lead is sort of the lens through which all of the other characters get filtered, whereas Lugosi actually has a very strong personality, a very distinctive personality.
Interesting. So yeah, I don't know how relevant this is, but I had an idea that Lugosi has Asperger's syndrome, whereas you said kind of he had social anxiety. I'm actually kind of thinking that he was more social anxiety than anything else. I think this is kind of like only because like kind of accidental, like more semi-intentional. Like people know there are people in Japan that are like that, but they don't say it. Like, of course, like if you have like a disability that you can hide, basically you hide the best ability that you can because it's a matter of family shame and honor and stuff like that. I know in South Korea that they have a fake diagnosis for autism that's like pseudo autism or something, basically so to save face on the family honor. But what most people don't know is that Japan actually has the highest autism rate in the world. So there's in a 2008 study, there's a whopping 181 case per 10,000, and that it was the second closest was London. So there's a bunch of reasons why they think this is a lot of reasons why people think Japan's because it's an isolated island nation with like isolated genetics. But all this to say that that they could have written a character like that without knowing exactly what that is, just based on the fact that they know someone with it and they just want to kind of follow a character like that. And either way, I think it's interesting. Like, I think that a lot of times we write our characters like ourselves, and the main character, whose last name is Paru, this is just a simpler explanation of this, and it kind of goes into your theory that the author kind of based it off herself, based herself off of Legoshi and her personality, and she kind of wears a chicken mask in public for like all her interviews. Like I've seen pictures of it. It's very interesting. She looks exactly like the chicken in the episode that gives like where the chicken gives the eggs to Legoshi.
Oh! Weird egg salad hen.
Yeah. So you think that's a write-in for her?
Oh my word! Okay, that makes. Oh, holy crap! Now that actually makes sense because that's like a full 10 minutes of an episode, and it's just like, why is this relevant? That actually makes sense.
Yes. So she's notoriously private about her personal life and wears her chicken mask obviously to obscure her face. So I don't think there's any like public pictures of her face at least that are public. I think this also could be explained in terms of Japanese culture. Like I don't know if private life is supposed to be personal life is supposed to be private, but I know there's definitely like a personal life, public life kind of shift.
Kind of like the Roman idea, like what goes on outside your house is your public life, and what goes on in your house is what happens in your house stays in your house.
Yeah, that kind of thing. But like, I think that it can be also explained away that the fact that being in the manga industry is not considered to be a very honorable job, like being a teacher, especially like for women, like being a teacher or something is kind of more appropriate for them. And the fact that she didn't want to be accused of nepotism because her father was in the manga industry, again, which is pretty rare again. So like, it might just be because of that and like no mental problems, no nothing, no self-brain. So like that's an interesting thing to decode. Like you said, like Legoshi just has social anxiety. I mean, he's definitely different. We definitely agree he's different. But I noticed that like he has legitimate social ignorance. Like he does not know what to do. Like he doesn't realize he's a carnivore and like don't go in the face of herbivores. Don't like bend down to talk to Haru. Why are you doing this? Don't you know? Like every other carnivore knows but you. Why are you different?
That's actually a good point. No, that's actually a perfectly fair point because he is different.
Yeah, and he like in the scene like where he's like with a herbivore and she's in a locker and she slams the door and he's like right up next to him.
Yes.
Like, no, you don't do that. You don't even do that to carnivores. What are you doing?
He jump scares about 5 people in the series by accident. Cause, I mean, he's an intimidating character, but also, no, you have a fair point. You're right. There is this amount of social ignorance to Legoshi. I keep calling him Legoshi, but Legoshi. Yeah, like there's sort of an intense social ignorance or sort of outsiderness, which I think makes him which makes him ultimately more lovable, is seeing his inside-outside contradiction. But he is very relatable. I had not considered the possibility of him being on the spectrum before, but I think that's a possibility. I do think that he has a severe anxiety disorder. I think that makes him automatically.
It's comorbidity though, or like one is caused by the other. Like you become socially rejected, and then you become introverted, and then you get anxiety from not being on practice of talking to people. Yeah. But again, I'm not sure. Like you'd have to like kind of exegete the entire series and look for certain things.
You'd have to do it, but it is different that he is very self-contained. He is different, and that makes him very lovable. Or not very lovable, but I think it makes him very relatable to a lot of people. Yeah. It makes him very automatically relatable, and he's a good guy, so it's endearing to see him overcome these things.
I mean, like, I'm not the first person to, like, notice this. Like,
Sure.
I started noticing stuff like that, like, to, you know, quote-unquote diagnose him. But, like, it's on Reddit. It's been discussed. Like, some people, like, deny it. Like, I just don't know what, like...
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible. Like, it's just, like, interesting to me, like, how they could write someone like that because autism is so prevalent in Japan. But, yeah, like, not actually know that there's a name for it that's much more popular in the West. We don't really have a stigma against diagnosing people with any sort of disability, whether it's obvious like Down syndrome or not so obvious like dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like very interesting to me.
Right, which is like that's kind of thing because like working in what I do with tutoring, like trying to think like that's something that we're very open about like those things, then how to work with them to how to overcome challenges and disabilities and stuff. But
another thing, there's really no therapy industry in Japan. There's probably kind of like there's psychiatry. I don't think there's really much of therapy.
I have heard that because I know people have talked about that because the suicide rate is just so high in East Asia in general. It's very, very high. I mean, I know it's not exactly low in America, but
yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a really good discussion. I think people can keep having that. Also, I'm like, can I just throw out there that I do find the age of the characters a little bit disturbing for this story.
I didn't understand that when I read it. Like, do you just feel like they act OOC with their ages, or like they actually are like? I what do you mean by that?
I mean, for as a former boy that age, I mean, it's what you're thinking about, but like, I don't know.
Let's just say it's a two-tailed distribution.
That's a fair point. It's so yes.
That's like our worst joke on the series.
That is pretty
worse,
bad.
And that isn't poorly written as in the other words.
Yeah. So yes, the characters are a little bit young, and if you think about it a lot, you'll be like, oh wow, these characters are quite young, and there are a lot of really dangerous situations. But also kind of like independence is something that seems to be really expected in that society.
Yeah.
So it's not. It's like in the context of its own like canon, it's not that weird, but like
it's actually kind of un-Japanese because it's like where's their families? It's like they're at college,
right? You know? So right, that's like what made me think about like, oh wow, because I'm thinking about like, I think that there's kind of a gothic style to it because like what does it deal with? It deals with sexuality, nature, intense emotions with horror undertones, and extreme personal isolation. Those are the cornerstones of Gothic literature. I mean, it's interpreted differently. It's put into a much more modern sort of lens, or rather contemporary lens. But it does kind of take the classic tropes of Gothicism.
It's true. I mean, this kind of segues into it being metamodernist. That like Zootopia, which kind of goes in perfectly into your thesis of like anthros being kind of connected to the hip of metamodernism.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. Metamodernism, I don't believe is upon us yet. But this is a pin. I think it's also interesting how the series doesn't pin all of like the males' problems against themselves, against other people as like some elusive patriarchy, and if only because like feminism in general hasn't caught on in Japan, and critical theory, I really haven't heard anything about critical theory in Japan. Because again, like they're all like one race, and there's more women than there are men in Japan, and like other stuff like that. And it's a pretty wealthy nation, third biggest economy. But anyway, it doesn't go the route of critical theory, even if it doesn't have anywhere to point to for it.
Right.
Which is interesting because I also wonder in the far future that if metamodernism will come out of the Far East anyway, just because of their concept of Taoist balance and the kind of connection of metamodernist oscillation.
And tie that in with sort of the universal concept of sublimity, which is maybe not quite Far Eastern religion, but it can broach on it rather. Yeah. But
I think you can ultimately sum this all up, this entire conversation, this entire series about it does not seek to deconstruct a masculinity. But it seeks rather to seek a more balanced form of it, and it also seems to want to reconstruct sexual morality by questioning but not rejecting, and certainly not in a Christian way. maybe in a non-religious way, the hookup culture, especially for those who consider themselves non-religious, because Japan isn't very religious, especially since the whole emperor isn't God anymore, I think.
Darn it, I hate it when the emperor stops being God. No, but you actually, you raise a really good point. I actually agree with all those things that you said. It is seeking a better relational ethic. It is looking to remove a harmful aspect of culture, and it's also looking to create It is also looking to create healthier relationships. I mean, it is a thing that is looking towards a constructional goal rather than a deconstructional goal. And also, I was going to say another thing that kind of disproves that it is postmodern is that the most postmodern statement in the whole thing is when Louis is chewing out Bill and Lugosi, and then the school reporter shows up and he asks for a statement. He says it's okay to do anything, and you can do anything so long as you do it with conviction. That speech comes back to keep biting him throughout the rest of the series. It gets disproven so many times, like directly to him.
Yes.
And to me, I think that kind of drove home the point that this is not deconstructional. This is not deconstructionist. This is not deconstructionist. So yeah.
You could say that it disproves New Year's sincerity, but New Year's sincerity doesn't mean do what you want.
Right.
It's not Anton LaVey's the whole of the law shall be do what thou wilt. It's not. That's not neo sincerity.
It's do the best to be honest and do the right thing. At least in what you can. So, which is what Lugosi tries to do.
Good for him.
Good for him. He's a good main character. All right, so
you can relate to him, some more than others.
Yes, I think we both related to him, didn't we?
Strongly, which doesn't always happen, actually.
Yeah, no, it was nice to have a main character who was like, oh wow, I relate to this guy. All right, so if you would you recommend this series to your friends and family?
I give it 3 awoos out of 5, because it's especially since it's not a family thing.
Nope, not a family show. I'd give the first season. I'd give it a solid 4.5. Awoos out of one possible ahoo. All right, so we move on to questions.
Yes.
All right. So want me to start?
Yes.
All right. So I said Beastars has achieved cult status in America already, but it isn't what I'd call mainstream popular.
Yes.
How does Avant-Garde media connect with viewers as well, or even better than Beastars has?
Can you define Avant-Garde? Like, give an example of Avant-Garde media.
Something with high concept, something that came in with a high. Because as much as Beastars is, we like to think it's a fun, exciting show about animal romance. It is at its core a fairly high concept ethical drama.
And you're saying, why doesn't it connect?
You know what I'm saying? How do high concept things connect with the general public? Like Beastars.
Sometimes the sad thing is that a lot of times things gets lost to the context of history, that not so much that it doesn't work anymore, but if you knew the context where it's written, it'd just be so much better. For now, this actually has that's a big thing about that stuff like that. So sometimes it's just better to write things as timeless, and that's probably maybe one of the biggest advantages in speculative fiction is that if you have a created world, you don't you need to know at least much less about the current world or the world in general, or for it to work. Especially if it's not a reflection of the character's mind or it's a pastiche. So one of the biggest things I have against a pastiche is that if all these references to all these things don't become classics or aren't really worthy of becoming classics, or only really are so contemporary they only became popular in someone else's own time, then it's kind of a useless thing. Maybe in the future a lot of times when avant-garde things are forced to be taught to people, and just certain subgroups get it or like it. So hopefully that's not the it won't become a bargain bin thing. I can't ever see it becoming that, especially in its uniqueness. But who knows?
Yeah, that's something that I think about, because that's why I think older fantasy has aged a lot better than older science fiction.
Yeah.
It's because you can go back to say older time. I got it. Whereas a future time, it's like, well, we have a future time, but we still have these we still have 1950s gender roles. Okay.
And nuclear-powered everything, including cars.
Nuclear-powered cars. That was a great idea. Yes, I'm just driving my Buick Lead along the street. No, that's a really good point. I was just thinking about the same thing, like, you have to wonder about, like, unless novels are super explicit with their context, like, I'm thinking, like, Kazuo Ishiguro's Remains of the Day, how well are they going to remain past their era? Like, if... like I'm gonna think about maybe like the declining. I'd say maybe like the decline in readership of maybe like Agatha Christie among more contemporary people. Like we know who Agatha Christie is, but we don't necessarily like read her novels or understand all the context for them. Like and then
Another thing sometimes like you know all the twists, but that has yet to be seen if that really truly gets rid of like the classicness of something.
Yeah. All right. Your question, sir.
Do you think that living around Philadelphia, a city known for the obsessive sports fandoms that we've participated in ourselves, led to us successfully getting into fiction fandom/franchises?
I'll say this much: it makes it more socially acceptable.
So, football jersey okay, fursuit not okay.
Yeah, the eagle suit acceptable.
Oh yeah, swoop. Good old swoop.
Good old swoop. Swoop.
Keep me warm, really, really warm in a chilly 20-degree day in December. I was a Chick-fil-A cow where I worked, by the way.
Yes. And you were a fabulous cow.
Yeah, you told me.
Yes, I did. No, I think, yes, coming from a culture where it is coming from sort of the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic, like the East Coast, Upper Atlantic region, where it's normal to be part of like a fan base, to be part of a thing. Yeah. I think that makes it a lot more both socially acceptable and less odd to be like, oh, well, you guys are really into this. You hang out together, you talk about that. That's not weird. Like, even if it's something that's not sports related, it's not weird. So that's like, so everybody says like, oh wow, people are so rude on the East Coast. Yeah, but I think there's a stronger concept of us as a group. Like there's definitely an us. Does that even make sense? That makes sense to anybody?
Do you mean like we're part of like a greater? In Philadelphia, you feel like you're part of the greater East Coast or the greater Northeast collection of cities, or
not
what?
Exactly that, but I'm like sort of like that idea of like there being a culture, like a fan culture, is like the
like being urban in general, or what?
No, like when you're part of like a sports fan base or something like that.
Yeah.
There's definitely more of like a, oh, okay, oh, you're into that. That's weird, but you know what? That's okay because we both like the Yankees. We both like the Phillies. You know, it's like one of those. Yes, we can both get on and yell at Nelson Aguilar for dropping everything that's thrown his direction. Did they trade him?
I'm not even paying attention.
Okay.
Does it even matter anymore?
I don't think it does.
We're all miserable.
Hey, you made Dallas's life miserable, so that's worth it to me.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so here's one that I think. I said, this series I think has quite possibly the first truly necessary sex scene I've ever seen in fiction. So
I think you have something to be said about that.
Yes. So I think this does show that sexuality can be a key part of a series without it being unnecessary, or excessive. So how do you think you should treat that aspect of fiction properly when it matters? Like, I guess it's sort of a question about both the treatment of it in this series, but also of it in general.
In my own writing?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I think you kind of, like, for me, like, I don't like showing that stuff because it's, like, real people are involved and they had to recreate that stuff, so I kind of shy almost, like, completely away from it if I can. I don't think I will ever, like, get to a point where I'll have to show it, because, like, if you watch, like, anything basically made before the 70s, they had great ways of implying it and, like, doing it without even being, like, gross. I don't know, like trying to turn somebody on. Like you even see in good great movies like Chinatown. Like it just like certain things just don't need to be shown. Like
yeah,
the difference between something being exploitive and not. Like just like this is you're right. Like probably the first time like a mating scene,
yes.
mating
yeah.
has ever been. So yeah, I think like I look towards older films for like showing, like telling and not showing, basically. So that's where I get that stuff. So I definitely a tell and not show kind of guy.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. I mean, I can think of To Catch a Thief as being one that does that pretty well, or sort of the classic cigarette while you're in bed cigarette, or even a more modern show that does that. I was gonna say Lion King. Lion King, the original Lion King actually does that pretty well.
I don't remember that.
Just ask Elton John.
Oh.
Yeah. You saw that look. We all know what that look meant.
There's a Jordan Peterson video about that.
All right. And
we hope they were okay because, like, just before that, they were like wrestling each other, which apparently actually happens.
Okay, we're done. All right. So, your last question for me.
We all know that some of the greatest fiction pops up in times of global desperation, like how Citizen came in the middle of World War II, and how Star Wars popped up in the post-Vietnam malaise of the United States, and really, I guess, in a combination to the world of the malaise of the 1970s. Combine this with the fact that the Avengers and the Star Wars Skywalker Saga movies ended all last year with a decade, along with a lot of other stuff that I'm not going to go into.
Sure.
Do you think the next fiction super zeitgeist is imminent?
I mean, I believe the nature of shared fiction means that something is imminent. Something's always imminent.
True, but it will be a super zeitgeist in the way that like Citizen Kane or Star Wars. Even if eventually, if it's like 5 years from now,
the hyper watershed, because Star Wars is still.
I think totally were that. I think they totally qualify as that.
Yes, because Citizen Kane.
They don't even necessarily come in each decade. Like, I would argue that the 2010s didn't really have everything because it was so franchise built because of the bad economy.
True, which is
making a lot of that repeat though because the economy is going to be terrible this decade as well. But
probably
even
yes.
Indies, even then.
So I'm thinking like with Marvel. So Marvel was a commercial and movie force, but it wasn't really a zeitgeist. Like
it wasn't. It was like something leading up to multiple, the Avengers trilogy, really. If anything,
and that's not
technically not a trilogy.
Yeah, and that's not to knock it. That's not to knock it either.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is important. Like it's like saying Marvel's not important. It's like saying the westerns of the '60s weren't important.
Right. It's like. The superhero movie is our Western.
Yeah.
It is. It's our generation's Western. So, if we were to take a look back at that, no, you can't say that Marvel's not important. You can't even say they're bad movies. They're not. I mean, they're a bit formulaic, but they're not bad movies. At all. But they aren't the super zeitgeist. They aren't what Star Wars is to... I don't know. I do think that it will be... I do think there will be one. I don't know what it'll be. I suspect it will be something original, not a book, not an adaptation.
Yeah, I think so too. It won't be like come out of an IP.
Yeah, it won't come out of an existing IP, and it will probably be speculative fiction.
I think that's pretty solid of a guess.
I'll throw those three up there. Now the question is it foreign or is it American? And that'll show you sort of the balance of cultural influence. I still suspect that it will be in fact American.
Yeah, I think so too.
I'm interested to see.
Who knows?
I'm interested to see because I do think that. I think sort of in that coronavirus is going to be a watershed moment for our generation. It's going to be a thing that we can say to our grandkids, hey, remember when? Sitting on a porch someday. And yes, I do believe we will still have porches. We won't be pod people 55 years from now. We won't. It's not going to happen. People don't work like that. People aren't that dumb. Believe me. I don't think people are that dumb. Of course, feel free to come to my pod and yell at me for that in 55 years.
Yeah, sure.
I'm really bad at predictions. I did get the World Series right this year, though. I did say Washington in 7, so...
No. Well, then you have a reputation. That's good.
A little bit. But, I don't know. I think that those sort of things would be kind of safe to guess. But beyond that, I'm not sure what to say. I think it might be something that I'd like to see how fiction gets affected by our current sort of crisis. But I don't know. Maybe people will move away from sort of the whole like Oblivion virus thing, because that's been a theme in heavy fiction like since the turn of the millennium.
Do you actually think fiction might actually be more positive? That it will kind of outgrow post-apocalyptic and cyberpunk and all that?
It might, because people
It's
say
not like outgrow, at least be more positive.
at least more social, maybe, because people will go, oh wow, hey, look, we went through this, maybe we, of course, then again, there wasn't exactly a blooming of hopeful literature during the Great Depression, now was there?
No, but there was during World War II. I mean, it wasn't exactly depressive, but like Lord of the Rings was, I would say, hopeful, and that was written during
True futurism. Unless literature uses this as an excuse to trot back into its early 90s nostalgia, which may not be a good thing.
Yeah, because then it would just like have this sort of hatred of the 21st century, which is kind of a rejection of the notion of narratives of progress, which I think even now things are just being slowed, not stopped.
Yeah, no, I do think that like
capitalism works, and so does technology.
Yes,
when used right.
Yes, it does. Technology is progress. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like the world is a better place than it used to be. Like I don't think that's too much of a risky statement out there. Like the good old days are an illusion. Like that's not to say that certain things were better in the past, but the good old days is a massive illusion. Yeah. All right.
One last thing before we go.
Sure, go for it.
If we're going to the original premise, the new zeitgeist of the new decade. Here's a hint for us all, I think, that we'll see the first thing that's entirely Generation Z. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are going like, oh, no, Has-Been Hotel, that's the first full Generation Z. No, it's not.
No. That's not going to be the zeitgeist.
No. Disney Pop was born in 1992. She's millennial. She's 3 years she would have been older, she would have been qualified, but not anymore. So that can be said about the voice staff. That it's a very millennial thing. Maybe it has a high viewership among Generation Z. But that's different. We're talking about content made by Generation Z. We have yet to see the first big thing to get popular made entirely, or at least helmed by someone Generation Z. But we will see that in the decade. Later in the decade, but we will see it. Yeah. That's going to be very interesting. I'm very pumped for that.
Yeah, no, that'd be very interesting. Also, I'm going to throw out there that I mean, as much as I think some of the artistry and work on Has-Been Hotel was quite impressive. I don't think that's not the zeitgeist force. It's too niche.
Yeah, I mean, we've already. It's not like if you say, oh, it's like the first big animate original animation on YouTube. Like it's showing how YouTube really does give power to the content creators. But
sure, that's a good thing.
Homestar Runner was kind of like the first thing of its genre, and kind of people forgot about that already. So.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong about Homestar Runner.
That was like 2007, right?
Yeah,
or whatever.
I mean, the very idea of sort of a YouTube channel is very much that. I mean, it's one of those things, but there is like a line between like you can have somebody who's got several million subscribers on YouTube, but there's a half decent chance that people in other countries, people who aren't on the internet that much, won't know them.
Yeah. And also I meant for like animated thing, original thing, not animated, not original thing. I don't know what the first original series, if you could call it that, thing that YouTube was. And of course YouTube, being the way it is, as kind of like this being very postmodern, it's kind of like blurred the definition of what like series and original and internet and TV is anyway. Yeah. But I think
what is TV?
Anime thing on YouTube, Homestar Runner was first.
Yeah, no. It's like you know, as much as I think there's artistry to appreciate with Visipop, that's I can tell you this much. I'm 95 to 99% sure that ain't the one. That ain't the one that we're gonna sit around with and say, "Hey, remember when?"
It's kind of more, yeah, and it's also like I think so. Going back to Citizen Kane and Star Wars, and I know we're wrangling all, like, it kind of has to almost be not positive, but at least something that's like, because Citizen Kane arguably wasn't positive. It kind of was. I thought it was cool.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that kind of like Star Wars lifted us out of malaise. You know, in Star Wars we had Patton and Chinatown and Clockwork Orange, and we're kind of seeing a lot of actually return to very specific trends of the 70s. Like we have the Demon Thing, Hazbin Hotel, Heck of a Boss, not Heck.
Heck of a Boss.
For Bad Good Omens. Of course, there's more horror, like in the 70s, like the Exorcist, The Omen, stuff like that. And of course, we're having
John Carpenter's stuff in the 70s.
What?
But John Carpenter's stuff in the 70s or the 80s? John Carpenter was the 80s.
Halloween, yeah, and there's a Halloween and all stuff like that, like all this like devil movies, and it's coming back as a comedy thing. Interestingly enough, and there's also the weird Satania thing on YouTube was another original thing. But also we're having kung fu stuff come back in the form of Marvel's Shanghai or whatever. So, and that was a big thing in the 70s too with Hong Kong action cinema. So
we're reliving the cinematic 70s
and the economic 70s soon to come.
70s economy coming to a state
near you. Everybody had long hair from the lack of the barbershops opening.
Oh my word, the 70s with internet is just terrifying. Oh my word, that's right. I heard somewhere that wood paneling is making a comeback.
And you said those weird SUV crossovers are the new Malaise cars.
Yeah, the new Malaise cars, because they're all super similar, they're all really boring. Yeah, no. They're all squishy. Yeah, okay. Oh my word. Oh, fantastic. We're in the 70s again. Nice.
Gonna have to start wearing bell bottoms, or somebody has to. Yeah.
Well, hey, you know, there have been worse fashion trends. As long as mullets don't come back.
That was more David Bowie back in the 70s.
That was more David Bowie.
And the 80s caught up to that.
80s caught up. We did have a brief mullet revival in, like, the late 2000s.
I don't remember that.
Good.
Gosh, does that mean the 2030s is going to be the 80s?
I really hope so. I want my swoopy purple designs and white suits. Alright, so on that note, we have gone ridiculously over time.
Now you have something to listen to.
now you guys are everybody's gonna have something to listen to while you guys are in, isolation, and you will have these virtual hugs from us to hold you as the world economy comes to a screeching halt. We will be your seatbelts. Alright, on that note, you guys have a fantastic, what time is it? Groovy, that's right. Have a groovy afternoon, evening? I don't know what time of day it is. It all runs together. Alright, so have a groovy evening. Have a groovy evening. Again, from Behind the Curve, this is Andrew.
And Matt.
And we're signing off, and if you manage to make it all the way through with one of your children, we thoroughly apologize. Alright, bye now.